This video is all about this guy, Zoraal Ja. Why is he so awesome? Well, every time he attacks, he breaks a forward, which is very strong, but only if we can give him haste to make sure we get good value out of him on the turn that he's played. Otherwise, he's only going to be like Opus 18 Galuf, where we're hoping he can survive a turn before we can gain anything from him. And thankfully, Zoraal has another ability that gives him haste if we control 4 or more Category 14 characters. So as long as we have 3 other Category 14 characters on the field, we can play him, he'll get haste, and we can get a return straight away and then pose a continuous threat every turn afterwards. The easiest way to get the other Category 14 characters on the field is with backups, and it turns out that there are enough playable Category 14 backups in all the elements to mean that Zoraal could go in any deck that's a 2-element combination, as well as in Mono Lightning itself. So in this video, that's what we'll look at. 6 decks using each element combination, which have predominantly Category 14 backups. Now, the first thing to say is that we don't have to have all of the backups as Category 14. Obviously, the more we have, the better the chances of getting the 3 characters on field as quickly as possible. But if we've got other backups that can dig by drawing, looking at the top few cards of the deck, or searching, then we can get away with running around 10 Category 14. But the second thing to consider is that if we do drop the Category 14 count down, then we don't want too many other options for the other backup slots because we'll only ever want up to 2 of them on the field. So we only want to include things that are the best other choices, if you like, that can help dig in those ways that I said to get us set up faster. If possible, I always look to include a backup engine, which means a backup that can search another backup. If we're looking at only Category 14 backups, then Louisoix is the only backup engine. So in the elements that can use Louisoix and his targets, which are Mono Lightning and Lightning Water, we don't necessarily need another engine as well. I'm a bit reluctant to run Louisoix in other element combinations because he'd only be searching for another Lightning backup, and I think it's better to have an engine that would search for the opposite colour if you're in a 2-colour deck. Let's start with Mono Lightning. These are the best Mono Lightning backups we can use. The standard units can be run at 3 copies, and we can have 3 Louisoix with 2 or 3 of the targets. More on him in a moment. The Nath is okay, but we don't actually need him because we can run enough of the other things to get to the count that we need. For the non-Category 14 backups, the best 2 options are Rickard, who reveals the top 5 cards and adds a lightning card to hand, and Reeve. I prefer Rickard because he digs further into the deck to find the next backup, but you can run a mixture of the 2. So that's our backup line sorted. Then we need to look at the forwards. In Mono Lightning, the best thing we can do is Xande into Arden. And to make sure we get up to the 8 characters needed for Xande, we'll need some monsters. Skeleton is probably the best because he only costs 1 and he's easy to build up to 3 characters to be able to get a kill on something that costs 4 CP or less. And after that, the other good options are this Behemoth, who can deal 7k to something on entry, and also you can sack him to kill damage forward. And Black Knight, who kills a forward or monster that costs 2 or less, and you can pay 5 to break anything. I quite like this Shadow Dragon as well, but I never seem to be able to find room to fit him in, so I always end up dropping him. We're always going to want to run this 3 CP Odin because he'll draw us a card once you get to 5 characters, and this Odin is also very strong. After that, the question is what other forwards to include, and I think there's 2 branches that you could go down, which are the Scions package or Seifer. The Scions package would take up a lot more slots, so it would include these guys. It also means we wouldn't run the Alisei as a backup because we'd want this forward instead. A deck that goes down the Scion route with all of the things we talked about regarding backups and monsters would look like this. The only forward I haven't yet talked about is the Aranea. She pays for herself because you'll reveal the top card and it'll be lightning and you can add it to hand, and she's an EX burst, so she's helpful to get you to the 8 characters. I've also included the Black Mage backup, which I didn't include in the earlier slide. It's just a personal preference. It can reduce something by 4k Sometimes if you've already got a forward on field and you swing and they've got a blocker that's bigger than it, you can then play the Black Mage afterwards to kill that forward. Also, 4k is enough to kill the Mog that gets deployed from Tybus, so that can come in handy as well. And then if we look at the other option, which is using the Seifer, similar to Zoraal, Seifer's only worthwhile if he has haste. So we need a Raijin to make that happen. And we've got two options. There's a forward that can give him haste and a backup. I tried the forward, but I'm just not a fan of the whole self-mill idea. I get too annoyed when you mill good cards into the break zone, which you want to draw instead. So I much prefer this backup, which can give the Seifer haste. So I'd run 3 of him. That also means that I need to revise the backup lineup slightly for the non-category 14. So instead of having a mixture of Reeve and Ricard, because we want to include 3 Raijin, there aren't as many slots available for those things. So I've gone with 3 Ricard and no Reeve. Since Raijin is so critical for Seifer, we can also run this Adea to search him. And then we need some other number of category 8 forwards to make Seifer be able to retrieve something from the break zone when we play him. Unfortunately, this is the problem we run into because the other options kind of suck, in my opinion. So this old Adea is decent, but again, I'm not a fan of the whole self-mill thing. Adele is okay, but she requires you to run a higher number of Adeas, which I don't really want to do. And this Irvine is okay as well, but often he's a 3 CP do nothing other than having haste, which isn't brilliant. Here's what the Seifer Mono Lightning might look like. Again, I've included Aranea, but only 2 copies in this version. I'm coming round to the idea of the War Pastinian, just as an option if you find yourself with a spare CP. Most of the other forwards are reactive plays that can kill your opponent's forwards. So if they're holding back on committing something to the field, you could warp an Estinian and threaten 2 points of damage, which might encourage them to play one of their forwards, and then you can kill it with one of yours. And now I'll flick between the 2 decks so you can see the similarities and where the differences are in those 2 packages. Next, we'll look at Lightning Water. We've got a lot of good choices for Category 14 water backups. We can run the Alphino as a search target for Louisoix, and we can run these guys as solid odd-costed plays as a second backup. We could also run Merweb, who searches for a water forward, and for the non-Category 14 backup, Lena is the obvious choice. We could also go down the Scions route if we wanted to, with Tataru and Urianger as backups. But ignoring the Scions for a moment, if you look at the other backups that we've got there, it's not too dissimilar to the backup line that you see in a lot of the Lightning Water monster decks that's been so prevalent at Euros and Worlds. So with not too much adjusting, you can take that deck and turn it into something like this. Next up, we have Fire Lightning, and immediately I was drawn to the Hien and the Wuklamart. You can also run the Alphino that searches because you can go down the Scions package again and go Alisei into that Alphino to search for any character. Hien's going to give all of your Category 14 forwards the chance to attack twice, and the Phoenix monster happens to be Category 14 as well. Moving on to ice, I came up with this. So a lot of the forwards you've probably noticed are similar to the Seymour stuff that I've already talked about in other videos. And then you can also go with the Zeramis and the Alcid and the Sephiroth to bolster your numbers, because predominantly the ice cards are the powerful ones here, and it was only Zoraal that was the solid lightning choice. But if you're having ice as your second element, then suddenly Zeramis, Alcid, and Sephiroth look a lot stronger. Here's the Wind Lightning deck. I was drawn to Dragoons because a lot of the Category 14 options in those 2 elements happen to be Dragoons. And if you can get 3 of them on the field, then the Kane LB costs 5 less. So suddenly he's a 4 CP LB, so basically 2, because any LB card is effectively 2 CP cheaper because it's not coming from your hand, and he can get back any character. And obviously, the Cloud, the multi-element Cloud, is very strong. You can go with the Lulu Alexander as well to break monsters and draw a card, and also deal with 5 costs and higher like Tybus and Seymour. And lastly, here's an Earth Lightning deck. I was a bit struggling for this one, to be honest, lacking inspiration. Every time I looked at what forwards were in these 2 elements, nothing really grabbed me. So I'll have to hold my hands up and say I took inspiration from Owen's deck, who came second at Cactimania. So this is largely a take on that with a few little tweaks here and there. So there you have it, 7 decks to showcase the wonderfulness of Zoraal. Thank you for watching. See you next time.